nous allons commencer cette réunion. Alors, je dois reconnaître le territoire sur lequel nous sommes. Moi, dans mon cas, je suis sur le terrain des Anishinaabe, le comité
through the second wave of COVID-19. A couple of notes. First of all, I've had some real technical problems, and I'm working off my Surface in my office because the other I just couldn't get anything to work on the PC. So it was a bit cumbersome actually getting things started and material printed off, and I apologize for that. But once again, today's meeting is taking place by video conference, and the proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. During the meeting, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. You hear a lot about our interpretation, and we need to facilitate the work of the interpreters. So one of the issues is the sound. If you have a headset microphone with the ear plugs, then you'll make sure that you're speaking closely to the microphone that's located on there. These headset mics should be working fine. The other issue that you need to know is the interpretation. At the bottom center of the screen is a globe which says interpretation. And you should move your cursor to the language that you wish to hear or speak in. In my case, I will put English. And so that will facilitate the translation. Now, I'm going to, first of all, invite our guests to speak with a reminder that each of the witnesses has been prepared to make their opening statement of up to 6 minutes. And so I'd like to welcome the first round of witnesses. And as an individual, we have Eric Cardinal by video conference from Montreal. The First Peoples Wellness Circle, Dr. Brenda Restoule, Chief Executive Officer from Nipissing First Nation in Ontario. And the Thunderbird Partnership Foundation, Carol Hopkins is the Executive Director, and she's with us by video conference from Bothwell, Ontario. So we'll begin our 6-minute round of presentations. And Mr. Cardinal, are you prepared to go for 6 minutes?
Oui.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, and good morning to committee members, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to testify as part of your work. I'm doing this as an individual, but also as VP of Acosys Consulting Service, an Aboriginal business that provides services to organizations, communities, and businesses that are Aboriginals. And I'd like to say hello to my friend and President David Echo. We also support various other First Nations Council in crisis managed during COVID-19. During the first wave, we saw that there was quite an extraordinary reaction of the various communities that took the seriousness of the pandemic to heart and really assumed the responsibility as real local governments. We saw several communities adopt varying measures than those adopted by the government and municipalities. For example, most of the First Nations in Quebec shut down their borders much quicker than elsewhere. We also saw First Nations maintain a border closure and shut down certain activities when the province was looking for openness. During the second wave, we can expect communities to take stricter measures. These communities should be supported by the federal government, particularly in terms of financial assistance, and this must be in keeping with their requirements. When I visited the same committee back in June, I talked to you about the Mi'kmaq Nation in Gaspé, which received very little governmental assistance because it wasn't a reserve under the terms of the Indian Act. However, even if the First Nation doesn't have a community to manage, its council does have responsibilities with respect to its members, just like any other First Nations government. Since the start of the crisis, the Gaspé Council has adopted the measures required to reduce the impact of the crisis on its members. Gaspé like other communities in similar situations, finds itself perhaps in a rather serious position with respect to assistance program. And this hasn't changed. Obviously, we need to adapt programs to better suit the needs of communities. That's fair for all Aboriginal citizens, Indigenous people. And we have to look at the economic impact. Like many other Indigenous communities, Gaspé has an economy based on fisheries and on tourism, which both sectors were hard hit. But assistance was not forthcoming. That's why I would like to emphasize this today. This second wave will have an even more worrisome impact on the economy of Aboriginal communities. And to help these Aboriginal communities, we're not talking about just subsidies. We're talking about helping them get their fair share of public contracts. So Access is helping the special team, the COVID-19 task force, which brings together the leaders of several Indigenous organizations on the national level. There's the Council for the Advancement of Indigenous Development, known as CANDO, the Inuit Women's Association of Canada, the Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada, and CCAB. This team provides the Canadian government with advice and comments on...
Interrupt the witness. I understand there's no English translation on the phone line, Chair.
We can't hear you, Chair.
I'm sorry about that.
Désolé.
Could we verify the translation, Mr. Clerk? Are we working?
It should be fine.
La traduction fonctionne dans la salle, mais je vais vérifier. Ça devrait être réglé.
I can hear it okay, although just now when he spoke in English, I got French translation. But apparently the phone line was not providing English.
The phone line where our staff are?
Yeah, there was no English.
We should be fine momentarily.
Apparently it just came on.
Okay, so...
Okay, sorry, and I apologize to the witness. I know...
Well, we can't, you're no apology required. We need to function in completely bilingually, otherwise we have to suspend the proceedings, so that's fair. But I should say to Eric Cardinal that I've saved you about, looks like 2 minutes, so you've got some time left, so you can continue your presentation now, Mr. Cardinal. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I was saying, the task force provides strategies on 2 subjects. It identifies and mobilizes the supply chain in Indigenous circles so that they can participate in the government's RFP process. Secondly, we analyze the impact of the crisis on Indigenous businesses and communities so that the Government of Canada can provide adequate support. The work began with a poll that shows that Indigenous businesses have been disproportionately affected by COVID-19 compared to the rest of businesses in Canada. One of the observations was that the government does not turn to Indigenous business for purchasing goods and services. In order to rectify the situation, the task force decided to create, in partnership with Indigenous Affairs Canada and PWGSC, a database which is specific to Indigenous businesses, which may enable them to participate in government contracts. COSIS is associated with Google and the SATA systems to do this. The Indigenous and businesses have responded massively, and I'm happy to announce that enabled them to generate more than $5 million in sales. In order to meet the needs of the government in terms of products and services that are related to COVID-19, this initiative provides Canada with a path towards economic reconciliation. During the second wave of COVID-19, the priority has, of course, been to ensure the health and security of individuals, but the government must ensure that they support the economy, something which is often fragile amongst Indigenous communities. One of the best ways to do so is to support Indigenous businesses through contracts, product and service processes. To do so, it is obvious that the government has to increase its efforts. I would point out that the official target of the government is to achieve 5% of Indigenous sales. We're currently at 1%. So there's a lot of work to be done, and that will make such a big difference for Indigenous businesses. Since the impact of COVID on the economy is just not simply about numbers. We lose jobs, we lose revenue. There's food insecurity, depression, and other consequences. In order to deal with this second wave, it is clear that we need to make sure that the greater priority is given to the economy and businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And that was well within time, so thanks so much. Our next witness for 6 minutes now, Dr. Brenda Restoule. Dr. Restoule, please go ahead for 6 minutes. Brenda, you're on mute. Your microphone, there you go.
My apologies, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that. Good morning. Ani bojo waps kwestijnakas magisi dodem dokistin jaba nishnabe and now. First People's Wellness Circle is pleased to be a witness before the Standing Committee today. As an Indigenous-led organization dedicated to advocating for mental wellness in Indigenous communities and supporting a segment of the mental wellness workforce, we would like to focus our comments around the First Nations Mental Wellness Continuum Framework, where we get our mandate to talk about mental wellness during COVID-19. A recent workforce survey was completed by the implementation team of the First Nations Mental Wellness Continuum Framework, found reports of noticeable or significant increase in rates of stress and anxiety related to COVID-19 and public health measures, including depression, substance use, violence, financial stress, and stress in meeting basic needs. This matches the June 2020 Stats Canada report on Indigenous people's mental health impacts during COVID-19, which saw fair or poor mental health with stress and anxiety particularly noticeable for Indigenous women. Children and youth are experiencing higher rates of loneliness, stress, and anxiety as a result of public health measures. And although there's a lack of Indigenous specific data, past evidence suggests that negative impacts are exacerbated by family and community challenges such as intergenerational trauma, difficulty meeting basic needs related to housing, clean water and food security, financial insecurity and poverty, violence, substance misuse and mental illness, and inequitable access to health, community, and social supports. Informal reports have also indicated that the public health measures have also re-triggered memories of colonial trauma and are negatively affecting well-being of families and communities. The same workforce survey noted there was a noticeable decrease in access to health and social support services, although there is a noticeable increase in need for information around mental wellness and need for better and more reliable connectivity and access to technology. The same survey highlighted how nimble the mental wellness workforce in our communities has been to meet needs by increasing their partnerships to support families and communities, continuing to provide access to mental wellness services, including increased access through virtual care, being innovative in their approaches, and ensuring access to land-based activities and cultural events. There is concern, however, around the capacity to meet the increased demand for services, supports for children, youth, families, and elders, and populations at greater risk of mental health issues as this pandemic continues. It's expected that the mental wellness pandemic will last far beyond this pandemic and requires a thoughtful and planned approach. We offer the following suggestions. Number one, access to culturally relevant mental wellness supports and services across the lifespan. Mental wellness supports and services in Indigenous communities have consistently been underfunded compared to Canadians, resulting in a patchwork of supports and services that vary across the country. The pandemic has exacerbated pre-existing inequities in mental wellness services, as noted by higher levels of crisis, violence, and overdose deaths. Services have not been funded in ways that support the worldview of Indigenous people. The First Nations Mental Wellness Continuum Framework identifies the need to invest in community-defined and led programs and services across the lifespan that leads to collective outcomes for families and communities. They must be accessible in the homes, schools, workplace, and community. Programs and services must be grounded in cultural practices, values, and knowledge, including enhanced access and funding for cultural practitioners. We have seen many creative efforts by First Nations to virtually share cultural teachings, engage in cultural practices, access land-based learning and activities, and access cultural practitioners to address negative impacts of COVID-19. The efforts support Indigenous citizens to feel connected and give hope during these unprecedented times. Number two, equitable access to virtual care for mental wellness. The public health measures required many mental wellness services to pivot to virtual care so services could be accessible to those in need. Wellness workers in Indigenous communities have also pivoted to provide virtual care. However, there are challenges in accessibility and competency in using virtual care. Connectivity, access to reliable internet services, and cost of services and technology are primary reasons Indigenous communities experience significant difficulty with shifting and accessing virtual care. These challenges are more pronounced in remote, isolated, and northern communities. Canada has committed to digital health for First Nations by 2030, but this is much too late. Mental wellness teams and NAIDAP treatment centers have already shifted services to virtual platforms, but the shift is hampered by poor connectivity and accessibility to technology and limitations in workforce capacity related to reliable and culturally relevant information on ethics, privacy, and liability, and access to supervision and IT support. Investments in connectivity, infrastructure, technology, sustained access to virtual care, and human resources must happen more immediately. Otherwise, the gap in health and equity for Indigenous people will continue to grow. Number three, support for mental wellness workforce. A needs assessment of mental wellness teams completed in 2019 identified human resources did not match the need in communities to address the complex issues stemming from colonial traumas. Recommendations called for additional funding to meet health human resource demand and provide wellness services to the workforce to minimize effects of burnout, compassion fatigue, and retention issues. The heightened pressures on the workforce during COVID-19 to do more, respond in creative and innovative ways, often with limited resources and tools, provide advice to leadership, and address mounting crisis of violence, substance misuse, overdose deaths, and mental health challenges occurring in communities is taxing an already overburdened workforce. The workforce survey highlights the noticeable efforts by the workforce to respond, and initiatives spearheaded by Indigenous health organizations have provided some level of support to the workforce, but it's not enough. Investments to increase mental wellness workforce is part of a solution to alleviate pressures. However, investments should also consider strategies such as debriefing, supervision, and workforce wellness programs, including access to elders, healers, and ceremonies as critical to maintain and retain the workforce. Finally, investments to define evidence from an Indigenous knowledge perspective on workplace mental wellness are required. Production of Indigenous evidence-based materials on workplace mental wellness strategies, supporting people to return to work, mental wellness training for supervisors and managers. And
sorry, Dr. Still, you're well over 6 minutes, and we want to ensure that the timing works so that we get all of the questions in. But I'm sure that the rest of your points will come up through the conversation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Dr. Ristoul. And now from the Thunderbird Partnership Foundation, Carol Hopkins. Carol, please go ahead for 6 minutes.
Okay, I just turning on my buttons there.
Okay.
All right.
I'll turn mine off.
Mai wena bojo no jem Indigenous cause gaye mainga and dodem, lene lanape kwe and dao, lanape king and donjaba. I'm Delaware of the Delaware Nation at Moravian Town in southwestern Ontario, the executive director of the Thunderbird Partnership Foundation. And our mandate is to serve First Nations across Canada in addressing addictions and mental health. I'm going to be talking to you much like Dr. Brenda Rastool shared around mental wellness and substance use. And I want to start by saying that in the context of the pandemic, culture continues to make the difference in supporting First Nations people with their wellness. And we know that because we have a national information management system that supports and is used by treatment centers, adult and youth treatment centers across the country. And we have a culture-based assessment tool called the Native Wellness Assessment. And so we've adapted the information management system specifically to collect information from treatment centers who have adapted their services over the pandemic to collect information about wellness. And so what we have found is that treatment centers have adapted services to outpatient services, and those outpatient services have been on the land services with appropriate public health measures. And through that outpatient service, excuse me, we've seen at least a 5.5 to 8% increase in wellness. And so we've through a CAHR funded study, we were able to determine that Indigenous wellness outcomes are described as hope, belonging, meaning, and purpose. And there's 13 different indicators to measure those outcomes. So the 8% increase in outpatient of wellness and outpatient services is in the quadrant of purpose. And so First Nations people who are accessing those outpatient services on the land are improving in a sense of purpose, having access to culture that in relevant ways to support their mental wellness is significant. In terms of virtual services, treatment centers have adapted to their programming to virtual services, whether it's individual counseling, group counseling, live streaming, psychoeducational sessions, or follow-up by telephone. We've seen as much as 7.5 increase in wellness services. And the one quadrant where we see the greatest achievement is in the quadrant of hope. So First Nations people who are accessing treatment services virtually have a greater sense of hope. And hope is having access to services that represent their identity, that have that are contextualized to reflect their community dynamics and what they're facing. We know that in prior to COVID, that we First Nations people have a lot of inequity across the determinants of health. So inadequate housing, lack of access to clean and safe water, and institutional racism. Those things have been exacerbated in the pandemic. And so there's greater stigmatization and negative experiences that are reported by First Nations. And so when treatment centers, and I'm talking about treatment centers, but then community-based services have also quickly adapted their services to understand how to reach clients in addressing substance use. And so the things that have been exacerbated in the context of the pandemic have been increased substance use, increased suicide rates in some regions, and community violence. And that is because communities don't have capacity to respond to the needs of First Nations people. We heard youth say that mental wellness was not prioritized as an essential service. And so youth were left to their own to figure out how to reach out to get support for addressing depression and anxiety. So as community programs, as well as treatment centers, the National Native Alcohol and Drug Abuse Program and the National Youth Solvent Abuse Program adapted and started offering virtual counseling on-the-land services or reducing their services with a modified number of people who would be residents of the treatment program with a reduced workforce. They all had a preference for culture, and that also is the greatest concern by communities, is having access to culture, wanting to ensure that they have access to culture. And so one of the things that we did as an organization was we created this community wellness hub where people would have continued access to peer support, access to resources, access to culture. But we also heard from communities where they are making access to culture elders, cultural practitioners available to deliver teachings and counseling over the internet. As Brenda said, we need greater capacity to sustain these innovations. And there are a couple of examples that I provided in my presentation that I sent. Communities that are suffering from addressing methamphetamines and opioids have partnered with the local health authority to ensure rapid access to addictions medicine, and also for providing outreach, community-based outreach, to ensure that people who are using drugs have the right, maintain the right, and are supported in their right to health, and getting access to what might be happening for them in addressing methamphetamines and opioids.
Ms. Hopkins, we're well over time again.
Okay.
And I apologize for that. We have a couple of issues. One is making sure that we get all of our questioning in. The other one is there are further meetings after our meeting, which tend to get delayed if we delay. So I have to be a bit tough on the time. This is for everybody. So with that, we're going to go to our first round of questioning. This is a 6-minute round. And my first name up is Mr. Viersen. Arnold, please go ahead for 6 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank the witnesses for being here today. Not quite sure where I'm supposed to be looking at right now, so I'll try to figure that out. Oh, looks like right here. Here we go. I want to just thank the witnesses for coming here today. And I think I want to start with Ms. Hopkins there. Thank you for your testimony.
I'm
just
not hearing
around
anything. Point of order, Chair?
Oh, Ms. Blaney's giving me grief.
What is your point
again.
of order?
I can't hear Arnold.
Hi. Can you hear me now?
I can't hear him. I see that he's speaking, but I can't hear him. Can anybody else hear him?
I can hear him.
Hello. Rachel Blaney always giving me grief about everything.
We can hear you.
Hello?
Are we let's ask the clerk to advise
I think
us
it's
on
the internet in Rachel Blaney's writing.
Ms. Blaney, you could try switching
Unfortunately,
your
she can't hear me
language
that I'm giving her
to
grief,
English and
so
back to floor, or
it's
vice
not
versa.
as much fun to give her grief then.
Carry on. I will ask them to deal with me. Go ahead, Arnold.
All right, thanks, Rachel. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Hopkins, for your testimony there. I was just wondering about. I come from a riding northern Alberta, 14 First Nations. You can drive to all of them. They've put up blockades at the highways and COVID has basically been kept out by doing that. But I'm wondering about the schools, and we've seen fairly broad strokes school shutdowns in Alberta, which don't necessarily make sense in a community that has no COVID in and has a lockdown or a barricade at the end of the road. But I'm just wondering what kind of impacts does it have on children and families when the schools get shut down?
Well, as you can imagine, there is an impact because parents worry then about the education of their children, but they're balancing many things in that environment where they're balancing their ability to work if they're working from home and their internet connection. That's the first point, is do they have digital connection if they're working from home? So communities that have been able to sustain an environment with no COVID cases have done that by asking people to stay home and to limit their contact outside the community. And so that's why they're able to maintain 0 COVID cases. And then I'll give you an example. My community is a very small community of about 575 people. We've been COVID-free until just recently, and now in a small population, we have 3 COVID cases. Our borders have opened up, our kids have gone back to school, we're back in our offices, and now we have to shut down. And so across the country where services have opened up, their concern is about maintaining that safe barrier from COVID-19. And so the stress on families about whether their children are participating in education virtually is their ability to work at home, have good connectivity while managing their children's education and helping their kids to stay connected to education. Many schools on reserve are not staffed solely by the people of the community. And so they rely on people from outside the community coming in daily to provide that education. And so in the 14 communities that you mentioned that are all accessible by road, I would imagine it's the same case where in order for that school to operate and function, they would rely on people from outside the community coming in. And so that doesn't ensure that barrier from contact with COVID-19 cases.
I was just wondering a little bit if you could address some of the social impacts that do come from just disruption of school and children being at home rather than going to school every day.
Well, I think one of the greatest I'm getting some feedback. One of the greatest impacts is for parents that are worrying about the education of their children. Should I, and if there is virtual education available, do they have digital capacity? That causes a lot of stress on the families who are trying to keep their kids in front of an iPad or a computer or a laptop and connected to the classroom. They're used to being on those devices probably for gaming and other kinds of social reasons, but parents who are trying to work and support their children in maintaining their wellness is a challenge. And so I've heard from many families that their children have said, if I have to continue education virtually next year, then I want to take the year off. Parents are asking about homeschooling because there's too much stress. And we've heard this across the country in populations outside of First Nations communities, is about managing the wellness of children. So if you're on a screen like this and you've got your hand up and you want to contribute and participate in the activity of the classroom and your teacher doesn't see you or is responding to another person, then that youth who might already have mental wellness challenges goes to a place of feeling like I'm still not recognized, I'm not heard, and they withdraw. And so then that child will then be less likely to engage in that virtual environment. Meanwhile, the teacher is doing all that is possible to manage a number of students. And so for kids that are participating and are required to check in with attendance being taken in the virtual environment, or for kids that are participating face-to-face in a school, it's the worry about how kids are being protected, the number of kids in the classroom. Do they have, and are they required to have personal protective equipment like face masks? Is that enforced? Are they able to have discussions in their classroom with somebody who has the skills to respond to the worry and concerns? And so kids, smaller kids, are having anxiety issues related to those concerns.
I have the same. I have the same anxiety, trying to look for hands and keep everything on time. Thanks, Ms. Hopkins. We go now for 6 minutes to Adam Van Couverden. Adam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much to the three witnesses today for your contributions and your testimonies. It's so important to hear directly from people who are working in community and with communities. And this is a really difficult time for everybody. But it's really, I think, well, as we've been saying, COVID-19 has really exposed a lot of vulnerabilities and inequities and inequalities in our societies. And I know that's front and center for you guys. And I just wanted to say thank you. I'm joining you from Milton, which is on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Ottawa-Darren, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat. More recently, the Mississaugas, the Credit First Nation. My intervention today will focus on mental health. And I'd like to talk about mental health in the context of the $82.5 million that Minister Mark Miller announced in August, but beyond that as well. I got to do a little bit of sport for development work in my previous life as an athlete ambassador for various charities, and I know the impact that sport, physical activity, and recreation, and that connection to the land and natural environment, which I think is even more relevant in Indigenous communities than settler communities, can have on children, but also those teaching and those coaching and those mentoring youth and people. So I was just thinking about long-term and sustainable strategies to mitigate mental health and addiction issues and problems that exist in every community in Canada, but are certainly maybe harder to reach right now because of isolation and a need to be apart. But I wanted to just talk about and hear from any interventions that you find have worked. If you think that $82.5 million will go far enough in for the time being, and how we can really leverage the opportunities, or at least the potential that sport, recreation, physical activity can have, not just for youth, but for everybody in Indigenous communities, Inuit, First Nations, and Métis communities across the country. And I guess just so that you guys don't have to choose, I'll go with Ms. Hopkins, Monsieur Cardinal, and then Dr. Restoul in that order. Thank you.
One of the solutions that we have provided to create access to virtual services is by we've purchased a number of tablets that have capacity to save, so it has an SD card and has minimal capacity for data connection via the internet. And we've distributed those tablets to treatment centers who will then distribute the tablets to their clients. And so sharing those tablets with people who use drugs, are in recovery for drug addiction or alcohol addiction, or people who are just contemplating accessing more services to support their mental wellness. Those tablets are distributed to people so that they have access. We plan to pilot that with 100 tablets, but we had a request for 120 tablets. And so those tablets are out in First Nations communities in the hands of people, adults and youth and families who are seeking some kind of support, access to culture, access to elders and cultural practitioners that can provide guidance. So the increases that I reported through the Native Wellness Assessment measure is a direct response to those people having access to those tablets. That is a small pilot test, and we anticipate that as we go further into the second wave, that there might be more need for those kinds of devices. We certainly heard in the Workforce Wellness Survey. We also heard in our survey that measures or looks at opioids and methamphetamines in First Nations communities that they need greater capacity for digital access and devices and data. And so that's one workaround solution that has been meaningful. And no, the 82.5 million is not enough. And so again, from treatment centers and others, they said, we need a way to sustain these innovations, as well as when the services get back to face-to-face, they're going to have to maintain both.
Thank you, Ms. Hopkins. Mr. Chair, if I have any remaining time, I'd ask the two witnesses.
Yeah, a minute and a half. Go ahead.
Either one, really. Dr. Restoul, perhaps?
Thank you. We've seen through our work with the mental wellness teams, there's been a lot of efforts to give people access to cultural teachings, cultural activities. And so we've seen a shift to being able to have people go on medicine walks, and so people can stay in their home and watch somebody do a medicine walk, or they're able to organize and say, today we're going on a medicine walk. We need you to go to this part of the, the community and look for these certain types of medicines. And then everybody's given an opportunity to pick the medicines, come home, harvest them, and move them into a tea or something that can help with health and wellness. We've also seen where mental wellness teams have gone and picked the medicines, dropped them at people's doors, and helped them to harvest them. So getting people on the land to harvest, to look for things, and then helping them to learn some cultural teachings around that has been really helpful. We've also seen mental wellness teams have encouraged people to go outside and do cultural practices. For example, one community talked about at certain times of the day, they had people go out on their front steps with their drums and sound the drums, and if they wanted to sing, but to sound the drums. And they talked about how sounding the drums was really soothing and supportive to people and made them feel safe and help them feel connected to other people in the community when they're feeling disconnected. So I think
we're at time now. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Stool.
Thank you. And Madam Berube, you have the floor. 6 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to say hello to all the witnesses. I'm on the territory of the Abitibi-Innu, 11 Anishinaabe communities. So my question will be for Mr. Cardinal today. In your presentation, you talked about a survey that shows that Indigenous businesses are affected disproportionately when it comes to COVID-19 in comparison with and this is comparing them to the other businesses in Canada. Can you provide greater details about this survey? Yes. Thank you. This is a survey that was conducted by the task force. You can see it on the internet. We surveyed 900 Indigenous businesses. We surveyed them after the first wave, and we saw that had a negative impact on almost everybody who responded. 9 out of 10 respondents said that they had a very negative economic impact as a result of COVID, and fairly negative as well. So this is a tremendous amount of people who are being impacted. The survey also shows that the Indigenous offices business had said that they had closed down their businesses. 1 out of 5 had closed down their facility and operations. So the survey shows clearly the impact, very significant impact of COVID. And we're going to continue this survey to see how things unfold during the second wave. You also talked about a special task force for COVID-19, and you talked about a database that's available. How does this database work, and how many participants? Yes, the current database has covers over 200 businesses, and we revise it weekly. It's a database that's managed by Candu and also by the Government of Canada. It's a very unique database because this is the largest database which deals with PPE and COVID-19 and for Aboriginals peoples. So it's a public database. And if you go to www.taskforce/COVID19.ca, and this is useful for the government, the federal, provincial governments, as well as the municipalities. That's very interesting. You also talked about economic reconciliations. What do you mean by that? And how will this play out during the second wave of COVID? Yes, we talk about reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. We talk about healing and reactions to colonialism, that type of thing. We talk about education centers And we are also talking about working with the economies of Indigenous peoples so that we can do away with the gap between Canadian businesses and Indigenous businesses. That's what we mean by economic reconciliations. And when we talk about economic development of communities, it's important when you talk about the second wave to not just think about the contract, but for example, in Quebec, the government recently invested in businesses that's going to enable communities to have access to internet. And that will give wings to Indigenous businesses. And that enables us to develop new businesses, local businesses. Gas station is one. This will all help to lead. This will all lead to economic recovery. It's an opportunity that we can't miss. Do you believe that with the first wave that we learned anything when it comes to Indigenous communities and things? Do we have any lessons that we can apply to the second wave? Yes. One of the best things we learned is that now we can have confidence in Indigenous governments. They have done an excellent job. And the councils, despite their limited means, have been able to take charge of the safety of their own population. And what we have to retain from all of that is that the governments, regardless whether it's federal or provincial, have to recognize the role played by councils in First Nations. We have to be able to have confidence in these councils. They are close to the people. They know what the needs are. And financial assistance programs should be more flexible to adapt to their needs. Thank you very much. How much time do I have left? 20 seconds left. Very quickly, you talked about the current situation when it comes to supply, and with that, Indigenous businesses only get 1% of the contracts. How do you? What can we do? We could do a lot. The government should first of all finalize the modernization process for the supply process for Indigenous businesses. One of the recommendations was a very simple thing. And we have to have standards. This 1% should be set for every level. That's a threshold that we could easily meet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Blaney, I understand the IT has fixed things, so you have 6 minutes now. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I did the traditional log out and log back in, and it seemed to have worked. So thank you for that. I want to thank all the speakers so much for your very important testimony. First of all, I would like to start off with Dr. Ristol. I really appreciated what you had to say, and thank you so much for those very clear recommendations. One of the things that you spoke about during your testimony was the triggering of colonial trauma. I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and how that's been brought up through us living through COVID-19.
Sure, thank you. One of the things we heard very clearly was that communities have worked to keep COVID out by looking at lockdowns and border controls. But what that has meant is that the community members themselves don't have the freedom of movement. And so for them, they talked about how that was a triggering of a pass system where they needed permission to be able to leave the community to go out and do their shopping and things like that. And those border restrictions have had the same kind of impacts because people have had to put out a request to leave the community, why they were leaving, how long they'd be gone, and where they were going to. The other thing we heard was that because there was that restriction of movement, people were feeling like it was similar to residential school, where they were required to follow somebody else's directions and to be put in a position of not being able to make decisions for themselves.
Thank you so much for that. You know, another thing, and I would like to come back to you and then go to Ms. Hopkins about this was just talking about the capacity for services and of course the challenges that folks are feeling who are giving those services. And I know I've heard from communities across my riding, and I represent over 20 Indigenous communities, that sometimes they will be getting services in their own communities and they're great services, but when they go out and access provincial services, they're often facing systemic racism and feeling that very strong pressure. So I'm just wondering, knowing that, I would imagine a lot of community members don't want to access outside resources, especially because of the racism they face. So that sort of builds an obligation for the people who are providing that service. So if you could just talk a little bit about that and the impact that it's having now, especially as we're going into the second wave and people are already tired.
Yeah, so many of our community members have found that services outside of the community, they're likely to face racism and often are not culturally competent. So the service providers are unaware or not equipped to talk about those colonial traumas and don't recognize intergenerational trauma. And they often feel a sense of judgment or stigma when they bring up issues and find they're having to explain how that reminds them of residential school, 60 Scoop, and those other things. And so they find that they don't really provide the adequate level of support. And so they end up back in the communities looking for those types of services. But as a practicing psychologist, one of the things I have noticed is over time, we've seen far more complex needs of our members. They come in often talking about I'll say a simple issue like depression or anxiety, but once you start talking to them, they start bringing up substance misuse, violence, their own traumas and the traumas within their families. And that complexity then requires a more wraparound approach to care. And I think that places a greater burden in our community services who sometimes don't have enough people to do the work. And sometimes some of the people in the community, let's say from a wellness perspective across education, employment, social housing, and those other types of services don't have the requisite knowledge to help support people who need to come with a trauma-informed care approach, I would say, recognizing that people are need to be met where they're at and they need the support in a way that helps them to move forward, even if it's, for example, they might be coming in saying they need housing, but we know they have significant substance use issues. And so departments will say, I can't help with housing until they deal with their substance misuse. So helping to get, I think, our workers on the same page to come from that trauma-informed care approach is one of the critical challenges, and I think overburdens us because we're seeing those inequities.
Perfect, thank you. That's a great answer. Ms. Hopkins, if you could.
Yeah, I would add from a systems level, we know that mental health is a responsibility of provinces and territories. And through health authorities, those mental wellness service or mental health services reach the citizens of Canada. But for First Nations who rely on that partnership with provincial or territorial health, we don't always see access to services. And so there's two examples that I provide in my slide deck. One is talking about opioids and methamphetamines. And that's a program that was initiated amongst the Independent First Nations Alliance of Northern Ontario. They did create a good partnership with the local health authority, and they did create rapid access to addictions medicine. They ensured that there were community outreach workers, but they did that through time-limited funding, which now is available to First Nations, was not in the past, and that's the Substance Use and Addictions Program that is managed through Health Canada. So that's time-limited funding. But in the time of 3 years, they're not going to be able to solve the methamphetamine and opioid crisis. And so there has to be sustainable funding. And that's virtual services at this moment in time, as well as on the land services. Another example is the INAN, Anishinaabe Nation Hope program. And again, it's virtual services, but they did not receive any support from the province to establish these virtual services. And so they had to look within to their own resources to establish enough to put this program together that was so vitally needed amongst the communities. And And so they talk about the access to services, preference for culturally based services. Again, building on what Brenda said, outside of First Nations communities, there isn't always that cultural safety or cultural relevancy. And so these are two examples where communities have reached out to other sources of funding, but they're temporary and they need sustainability.
Thank you very much. And thanks to all of our guests in the first round of our meeting today. Mr. Cardinal, Dr. Rastool, Ms. Hopkins, excellent testimony, and thank you so much for your participation today. I'm going to suspend the meeting for just a couple of minutes while we set up our next panel, and we should be able to get 2 rounds of questioning in beginning at 12 noon. So we suspend now for just a couple of minutes. to order. And our first witness in this hour is the representative of the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business. Tabitha Bull is President and Chief Executive Officer. Tabitha, please go ahead for 6 minutes.
Miigwech. Oni Tabitha Indigenous Nipsi Indigenaba Mijasi Dodem. As President CEO of Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business, I want to thank you, Mr. Chair, and all distinguished members of the committee for the opportunity to provide you with my statement and to answer any of your questions. Speaking to you from my home office, I acknowledge the land as the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. As Chief Poitras shared with this committee on November 3rd, 2020, this pandemic has highlighted the inequities in this country and exacerbated existing challenges. This statement underlines how, more than any other time in history, Indigenous issues need to be top of mind for the Government of Canada and the Canadian public. Since 1982, CCAB has been committed to the full participation of Indigenous peoples in the Canadian economy. Our work is backed by data-driven research recognized by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development as the gold standard for Indigenous business data in Canada. From the beginning of the pandemic, the Government of Canada introduced efforts to build supports for businesses. A number of those supports were required to be remedied to include Indigenous businesses, and while access is now available, CCAB has repeatedly highlighted the need for a navigator function specific to Indigenous business to assist with the understanding and uptake of the various programs. Indigenous businesses have found navigating the bureaucracy, which often does not consider their unique legal and place-based circumstances, a significant barrier to accessing the supports necessary to keep their business alive and maintain the well-being of their communities. The lack of targeted assistance for Indigenous businesses to utilize these government supports further adds to the frustration and distress that is a result of our history. This underlines the need for an Indigenous economic recovery strategy that is Indigenous-led, builds Indigenous capacity, and is well-resourced to support Indigenous prosperity and well-being. Access to external markets would be an important part of this work, including the need to back Indigenous exporters as part of that recovery. Such a strategy was not mentioned in the recent speech from the throne. Although we acknowledge the number of important renewed commitments made in the speech from the throne, I would be remiss if I did not express my disappointment that there was no mention of efforts to support economic empowerment of Indigenous peoples, businesses, or community. This is a missed opportunity for the government to signal to Canadians that Indigenous prosperity and economic reconciliation matters. As this committee is aware, in order to support sound federal policy development and effective interventions during the pandemic, and in collaboration with leading national Indigenous organizations, including my colleagues here today, CCAB undertook a COVID-19 Indigenous Business Survey, as was discussed in the last session, as part of the COVID-19 Indigenous Response Task Force. The goal of the survey was to understand the unique impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on Indigenous-owned businesses in Canada and to encourage the Government of Canada to support Indigenous businesses through purchasing PPE from them. As we dug deeper into our research, we found that Indigenous women disproportionately bore the brunt of the negative effects of COVID-19. More Indigenous women-owned businesses reported very negative outcomes to their businesses, 61% women-owned compared to 53% of men-owned. Women-owned businesses experience higher revenue drops as a whole, 50% or more, compared to 36% of men-owned. And in addition, Inuit businesses are most likely to have experienced a revenue drop of 50% or more compared to Métis-owned and First Nation-owned businesses. The CCAB appreciates the indication provided to us from Indigenous Services Canada that they will fund a second COVID-19 Indigenous business survey this fall and a further survey in the spring of 2021 to assess the impacts that the first and second waves of COVID-19 have had and are having on Indigenous businesses. It is our hope that the results of both surveys will inform effective policy and programmatic interventions to support Indigenous businesses' recovery and in turn support Indigenous prosperity and well-being. We welcome an opportunity to provide that data to you in the future. During my last appearance before this committee on May 29th, I pointed out that the unique circumstances facing Indigenous businesses were not initially taken into account when forming the eligibility of CEBA or Bill C-14. That initially left many large Indigenous-owned businesses ineligible for the wage subsidy. We appreciate that these gaps were remedied. However, we must not forget the additional burden the close to a month-long gap had on many Indigenous businesses. Furthermore, with an understanding that there were on-reserve businesses who could not access the programs available due to unique taxation and ownership structures, the government announced the distribution of $133 million to support those Indigenous businesses. Analogous to the work currently being done to extend CEWS and CEBA and the remediation of the rent assistance program, investigation and consideration must be given to the extended needs of the same businesses who are not eligible for that funding. I would like to underline that Indigenous businesses have repeatedly told us that they are not in a position to take on any more debt. I also mentioned in my last appearance that numerous Indigenous businesses were prepared to readily provide supplies or equipment to meet Canada's medical needs and the capability to rapidly scale up or pivot production to PPE. CCAB and other organizations, as discussed earlier, have provided lists of such Indigenous businesses to numerous federal departments and through the task force database, but only a small fraction of the over $6 billion of federal procurement contracts for PPE have been awarded to Indigenous business. An announcement on September 21st noted a total contract of $2.5 million to 7 Indigenous businesses. This represents only 0.04% of the federal spend on PPE, nowhere near the 5% commitment made last year in Minister Anod's mandate letter and the speech from the throne. The commitment is a target of at least 5% of federal contracts to be awarded to Indigenous businesses, and in the throne speech, a support of supplier diversity. The frustration and the lack of progress on this 5% target has been evident in our discussions with our members and at our Public Business Recovery Forum on September 16th. I would like to leave you with this point for consideration. Too often, Indigenous business concerns are an afterthought, resulting in Indigenous organizations like CCAB, NACA, CANDO, working to prove to government that their responses have not met the needs of Indigenous people. There is no better example of that than PPE. 0.04% of federal spend on PPE is not a genuine effort to achieve economic reconciliation. A reasonable starting point to support Indigenous economic recovery would include procurement and infrastructure set-asides for Indigenous businesses and communities. CCAB...
I'm sorry, Ms. Bull, we're way over time, and I need to keep the timing issues so that we can get all of the statements and the question rounds in. But perhaps the rest of your remarks will recur throughout our talk.
It only was thank you for your time, Miigwech. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we go on now to the Council for the Advancement of Native Development Officers. Raymond Winook, Executive Director, you are up now for 6 minutes. Please go ahead, sir.
I'm trying to start my video, but it says because the host has stopped.
We can hear you.
How's my sound coming in?
Your sound is loud and clear. Perfect.
Okay, well, thank you for allowing me to present today. Coming to you from Amiskwichi Waskihikan. That's the Cree name for Edmonton. My wife is currently a counselor at Enoch Cree Nation. Her late mother was from Blood Tribe, one of the largest communities, First Nation communities in Canada. And my late mother was from Ermineskin Cree Nation, on where I am a board member of their economic development investment group. Am I still good to go?
You're sounding great and looking great. Carry on.
Thank you. Same to you. So yeah, I can do. We've been around since the early 90s. We average about 400 members annually. So what we do is we work with a number of accredited educational institutions across the country to provide a certification. And we think and believe that if you are going to take training, then you might as well get some university or college credit for it. So that's what we've been doing. And we do a lot of stuff now online. So if you become certified through Can Do, for every dollar invested, you create $4.4 into Canada's GDP. We also hold a number of events. And of course, we all know with COVID, we're doing that all virtually now. We're doing a lot of events and webinars with the Office of Small to Medium Enterprises across the country. But with these events, for example, in BC, we used to do what we call the BC Links to Learning. And so for every dollar invested in that event, $6.7 were created back in the communities just by attending those events. So these are huge impacts that have to continue. The problem with that is a lot of our EDOs are funded annually on a per capita basis. So some communities will get $7,500 a year, where another community will get close to $1 million. So we're trying to be strategic, and we've looked at the analysis on trying to make a fair and equitable investment for that. We have many partnerships. One of the partnerships we have is with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, where we do the Community Economic Development Initiative. That's where we pair a First Nation with their surrounding municipality to work on joint economic development strategies. We've done that for the past 7 years. We've had 15 pairings. One of them of note is Enoch Cree Nation and the City of Edmonton. And last year, Enoch Cree Nation saw the creation of a new water treatment plant, and for the first time ever in their history, water from the North Saskatchewan River is now being delivered at Enoch Cree Nation. So it's those kinds of relationships that are being built through the SETI program. And it's a form of what my uncle, Regional Chief Wilton Littlechild says, it's reconciliation. That's what it is. We're actually boots on the ground and working with municipalities to make these partnerships produce some contribution to, of course, the GDP. And speaking of GDP, our population says we should be producing 100 billion annually. A few of my colleagues have said it's anywhere from 26 billion is what we're producing now to a high of 44 billion. Needless to say, there's a huge gap of almost 50 to 60 billion dollars annually. So for example, I mentioned the Blood Tribe, Kainai First Nation in Southern Alberta. They should be producing half a billion a year. What they produce is 100 million. There's a gap of 400 million in which they have to make up. However, that corner of the country has high systemic racism. So they know they have to get into the city of Lethbridge to start talking about creating new businesses or even taking over businesses. But there's no process for them to do that. That's again why we need the SETI program to go in there and produce these results. The SETI program in the upcoming year is cut back, and COVID-19 is a big blame for that. Our budget is going to be status quo. We can only produce 5 pairings. When we initially ran the SETI program, there was close to 400 applications from throughout Canada. We've serviced 3% of that. So needless to say, we need other partners to step up and come to the party. I'm currently talking to the provincial government here in Alberta about coming in as a partner in which to do that. The other thing I should mention is, yes, and it has been mentioned by your previous guest, Eric, and Tabitha's mentioned it as well, and that's the Indigenous Task Force for COVID-19. And what we are trying to do now is create that so it becomes open to any kind of procurement across the country.
I have to stop you there, Raymond. We're a bit over time on that, and but we'll certainly come back to these points through our conversation. I believe now Shannon Medadabobin is IT okay. So Shannon, you have 6 minutes on behalf of the National Aboriginal Capital Corporations Association. Please go ahead for 6 minutes.
Hi, my name is Shannon Matadawab, I'm the CEO of the National Aboriginal Capital Corporations Association. I'm a member of the Fort Albany First Nation of the Muskego Nation. Before I start, I wish to acknowledge that I am taking this call from the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq Nation. Thank you for the invitation to speak today. I'd like to address what support our financial network has been able to provide Indigenous businesses. what challenges we have faced, and what our clients need moving forward. You might recall that I presented to you back in 59 Aboriginal financial institutions. Our members are Indigenous owned and led and organizations that provide developmental loans to hundreds of First Nations, Inuit, Métis businesses every year. In April 2020, our network received $306.8 million to support Indigenous businesses impacted by the COVID-19 crisis. Of this total, 204 was to support emergency loans to Indigenous businesses. Our members were grateful for this relief funding. To date, and despite inequitable terms and conditions of the Indigenous specific programming compared to other federal measures, 37 AFIs have distributed over 60 million to 1,500 Indigenous businesses across the country. Our clients have told us that these loans provided by the same Indigenous institutions have had relied on the past are filling a gap. The loans fill this gap, but they do not provide what the network requested when the crisis first began. We had proposed a timely package tailored to Indigenous businesses. To date, such a package has eluded us. We have met with obstacles in securing the Indigenous specific relief funding that is equitable compared to non-Indigenous ones. My recommendation to address these issues: the relief funding for Indigenous business needs to come without delay. The federal government released the funding for the CEBA in early April, only a few weeks after the crisis hits. Due to delays in negotiating contribution agreements with ISK, our network could not offer relief until mid-June. These funds simply came too late for some First Nations, Métis, and Inuit businesses. The timing issues persist with the second wave. On October 9th, Canada announced further relief funding of $20,000 for businesses. By October 26th, that funding was available to smaller businesses. Meanwhile, our network still awaits word on whether we can offer the same additional $20,000. At this rate, it will again be 2 months before we can offer this lifeline to our clients. A larger portion of the relief package available to Indigenous business needs to be non-repayable. We're talking a lot about that task force survey. 40% of them indicated they could not take on any more debt. So this is a big reason why we need to provide more non-repayable to Indigenous businesses. On top of all the barriers that they currently face, they're going to have to work twice as hard to ensure that they repay a loan. So providing something similar to the Ontario program, which is 50-50, would be better. Terms and conditions of our relief package needs to be equitable to other federal measures. Our members have been making loans for several months now. Early on, they noted certain discrepancies between the conditions attached to the Indigenous specific loans and other federal measures, in particular for rural businesses delivered by some regional development agencies and community futures development corporations. Despite repeated requests from NACA, the Indigenous specific measures are burdened with lower stacking limits, more onerous lending terms, and emergency loans provided to the CFDCs. Some of the members have been forced to turn away their own clients and refer them instead to the non-Indigenous RDA or CFDC. This situation is demoralizing. We request this committee's support. The restrictions enhance the ability of our government agencies to extend relief to our clients at the expense of their own Indigenous institution. This situation is more troubling considering the mandate of Indigenous Services Canada to promote Indigenous capacity and evolution. Aboriginal financial institutions work tirelessly to develop solutions for and with Indigenous people. We live and work in their community. At a disadvantage before COVID hit, Indigenous businesses will need to work twice as hard than the average Canadian business to repay their loans. The AFIs will work twice as hard in supporting them get through this crisis. We're calling for a second phase of support that comes without delay, is Indigenous-led and tailored to specific needs of our community. Thank you.
Well, thanks very much, Mr. Metatawabin, and thanks to the IT folks. That was loud and clear. Thanks so much. It's time for a round of questioning now, 6-minute round. My speakers will be Mr. Vidal, Ms. Demoff, Madam Berube, and Ms. Blaney. Starting off for 6 minutes, Gary Vidal. Please go ahead, Gary.
Mr. Chair, I think our first speaker in the order for this one is Mr. Milello.
Okay, Mr. Milello, I had that. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Gary, for offering that up to me. And I'd like to direct my questions to Ms. Bull. Obviously, with the pandemic, many businesses have been switching to online, to e-commerce, to to try to operate in that manner. And in many northern rural regions, access to internet is a very big issue, and it really doesn't exist for many people across my riding. So I'm wondering if you can speak about how internet access in many rural areas are impacting how Indigenous businesses are able to adapt to this pandemic and provide some of their goods online.
Sure, thank you for the question. We definitely have heard from many members that access to internet and stable internet is an issue. It has been an issue for some time. And I think people, it's not only communities that are quite rural. So I'm from the same community as Dr. Restuel from earlier. I was quite impressed with her internet today. When I work from Nipissing First Nation, it's difficult also to even to participate in virtual conversations like this. We are pleased to see the more recent announcements around broadband infrastructure made by Minister Baines recently, and by provinces as well. Ontario has stepped up to do some additional funding. But we know that a number of our businesses, a number of our members have pivoted to e-commerce with support from a number of corporations, but they often have to work in the evenings or work at night to ensure that they get their orders and payments through. So it definitely is putting them at a disadvantage, and we encourage the government to do what they can to move the innovation for broadband in rural and remote communities forward.
Thank you very much. And another issue in my riding, we have a lot of seasonal operations. Really, tourism is the catalyst for all of our business, most of our business in northwestern Ontario, and many Indigenous businesses, whether they're marinas, lodges, you name it. They rely on a lot of tourists who of course, weren't able to come this year. Maybe if it was American tourists, obviously with the border closure, they weren't able to come, and many other people from Manitoba and from across Canada didn't feel comfortable crossing the border and coming out to my region around Kenora to spend their summer. So what I've been hearing from a lot of tourism operators and a lot of Indigenous owned operations was that they knew that this year was going to be tough. They were holding out really for the 2021 season, and some kind of, they kept saying to me, we recognize that the border needs to be closed. We recognize that these regulations need to be in place, that it's working. But if we can get through to 2021, we'll be okay. Now it's looking, late in the season. It's not very certain on what that operation is going to look like next year. So I'm wondering if you have a sense on how some of the seasonal operations are preparing for the possibility of losing most of or potentially all of their season again.
I think we've definitely heard concern from our members in the tourism sector, definitely. That is one of the largest growing industries in Indigenous business, and a lot of those businesses are young, so we need to ensure that we're sustaining them in business through this period. I participated in a finance standing committee recently where we talked quite a bit about tourism, the new changes to CEWS as well, to help those businesses be able to sustain and continue in operations so that they're there next year when people are able to travel. We've seen some good investment from provinces again, as example in Indigenous Tourism Ontario, and some really interesting innovative ways of doing virtual tourism through some Indigenous business members, Origin as an example out of Thunder Bay, not far from your riding. So I think we need to look at investment into how we can ensure that those tourism operators are able to continue to operate and continue to be sustained so they're there when people are ready to travel and able to travel again.
Yeah, that last comment sort of was going into what I was going to ask next, and how can the government really help a lot of those seasonal businesses prepare for next season, and perhaps provide a bit more clarity on what that season might look like?
I think it's very important across all provinces. We're seeing this everywhere, provinces, municipalities, federal government, on consistent messaging on restrictions, consistent messaging on business shutdown and closures and the requirements for them. So we really need to look at how we're messaging that across all provinces and for all industries, but also ensuring that it is looking at a regional base as well, so that we are looking specifically at certain tourism areas and certain areas of the country that may be able to open, and how then are we supporting better the businesses that aren't. Also from a perspective, of innovation and marketing campaigns.
Thanks so much. That brings us to our next round of questioning. Ms. DeMoff, you have 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for your testimony. I'm going to start with Ms. Bull and go back to procurement. The numbers that you gave us on PPE are really quite awful. I know I spoke to a business here in my riding who was able to apply, but he didn't get a contract, and he was extremely frustrated with the process. Now, you mentioned a navigator function. Do you have any other recommendations on how we can improve the number of Indigenous businesses that are being able to take advantage of government contracts?
So definitely, and thank you. We have seen, the set aside procurement opportunities. So the $2.5 million did come from a specific procurement call from Indigenous businesses for masks, but there was 233 organizations that bid on that, and there were 7 contracts. So we definitely know that there is opportunity there from Indigenous business, and we know the government has more needs on purchasing masks. So that's an immediate opportunity for us to go it again with another RFP. There is definitely a lot of frustration.
Can I ask you something about that though? You said 233 and 7 were awarded contracts.
Yes.
Those 233, are they considered again, or are they just lost? I mean, that's a huge discrepancy.
So my understanding is that there would have to be another call specifically because they did meet what their requirement was for the number of masks.
Sorry to interrupt you there.
No, that's okay. I think the other thing that we've really seen is a helpful function, and we've been doing this with our partners at OSME to do help in businesses understand what happened with their initial bid. So potentially it was initially that it was just disqualified because they filled something out wrong, but there needs to be an opportunity and a better way for PSPC and OSME to meet with Indigenous businesses and help them understand what might have went wrong in the process, so that next time they can provide again. We've heard businesses that have said that they have submitted numerous RFPs over the course of years and have never been successful with government procurement. So we need to be able to close the loop on those opportunities, and I think that would be a great help for businesses.
That was what the gentleman from my riding indicated as well. He just didn't know what he had done wrong. He was not able to get any feedback on his application. You mentioned women-owned businesses, and I'm just wondering, obviously they've been impacted much more than other businesses. Any recommendations on how we can support those women-owned businesses? Is it funding? Is it internet access? Because I think a lot of those women-owned businesses, I know in Six Nations, there's a number of women who have business that are more craft-oriented, but even at Six Nations, they don't have reliable internet. So maybe you could speak a little bit about what we can do to support those women-owned Indigenous businesses.
So I think definitely broadband. I know I sit on a call every Sunday with now about 60 women-owned businesses. Many of them are retail businesses, so have a craft or a product and have pivoted to e-commerce. They've done really well, actually, some of them in pivoting and in bringing their products together and curating Indigenous gifts. However, their biggest need is access to financing. We see more women-owned businesses that are financed privately or from their own savings. And there's still a bias about women-owned businesses accessing financing through traditional banks. And as Shannon noted, those businesses cannot take on more debt. So loan programs are not something that it's too risky for them to go in that direction. And I think the other that I know we're all talking about across the country is affordable childcare and access to affordable childcare. That burden not a burden as the children, but that extra responsibility definitely does fall more to women, as we all know, and particularly if you're trying to operate your own business, there needs to be a real focus on affordable childcare.
Love that answer. Thank you. When we're looking at the second wave, and it's hitting right across the country this time, it's not just isolated to certain provinces, except maybe Atlantic Canada's getting a little bit better. But what specific federal programs would you like to see, and are you being consulted as we're moving into the second wave to ensure that you're part of the discussions at the beginning and not as an afterthought?
So I would say actually I don't feel that we're being as consulted as much now as we were at the beginning of COVID. We're definitely, as organizations, and I'll let my colleagues speak to this as well, reaching out and continuing to have discussions with Indigenous Services Canada. But as I've been saying through this whole pandemic, these issues need to be across all of government, not only discussions with Indigenous Services Canada and CERNA. ISED needs to be thinking about how to support Indigenous economic recovery, as does NRCan, as does Finance, as does Treasury Board. Too often we see that those conversations only happen with ISK and CERNA, and they need to be considered across the government.
Well, if we're looking at programs for small business, those aren't actually the departments that you want to be talking to. And I think I'm out of time, Chair. Thanks.
I know you keep track too, so
I do.
Thanks for that. Okay, next we have Madam Berube for 6 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for all three witnesses. You talked about recovery strategies. Clearly, with the first and second wave that we've experienced, you have been experiencing problems. Perhaps, do you feel that the measures of the government have enabled you to avoid some bankruptcy, say? I'd like to hear your answers on that.
Can I start? This is Shannon Matera-Walburn from NACA. So we're delivering the emergency response program for Indigenous businesses, and the program was a full 2.5 months later than regular businesses. So we definitely have lost businesses. And the current increase in $20,000 to that emergency response has still not, I have still not received word that our Indigenous businesses are going to be receiving the same support. So as far as timing and responding in a timely fashion, we're already behind. And then when we're starting to talk about recovery, I don't want to be behind. So you have to engage the Indigenous institutions that are on your panel today to ensure that the needs of our community are being met in time to ensure that we all rebound at the same level. Otherwise, Indigenous communities are going to be rebounding slower, and it'll take a lot longer. So one of the members talked about funding. Well, funding is so important because our Indigenous businesses have been suffering from a 70% decline in government equity support to start businesses over the past 20 years. We need to support Indigenous businesses at the level that enables them to be truly successful and to recover from this emergency.
No. So when we did our survey in May and asked businesses how long they could operate without further supports, at that time 2% had already closed of the close to 900 that we surveyed. 10% of businesses predicted that they couldn't continue operation for more than a month without support. So knowing that there was a gap in the support that was provided, we do have significant concerns over that 10%. And over half of the businesses indicated that they were likely to fail within the next 6 months. So that is why this further survey that we will be doing in the fall is so important for us to really get an understanding of where we are in the economy, Indigenous businesses, and how many we may have unfortunately lost.
Ray wanted to chat. Thank you. Yeah, I think on the COVID-19 Indigenous Task Force, we're going to make our database public facing so that any procurement opportunity that can help our Indigenous suppliers across the country is going to be offered up, and not just based solely on COVID-19. So that's one of the areas that we're we're hoping that will make an impact going forward.
J'ai une autre question. I have another question. When we talk about other measures that could be taken, what could the government do to ensure the viability of Indigenous sustainability during and after the pandemic?
If I can start again, when I first presented in June, I outlined a couple of areas that would be positive, is improve the conditions to the current emergency program, undertake an assessment of what we need to get back to business, so engage our community, AFI funding to return to historical levels or at minimum meet the needs of our businesses because of that 70% decline, to ensure that the growth fund that was announced by the government in 2019 continues, because that's the source of access to capital for Indigenous businesses into the future. So we want to make sure that that happens. And the procurement, 5%, 35-year failure to ensure that Indigenous businesses are part of the government business stream. I think now it's the time to ensure that the government changes its culture internally to select more Indigenous businesses and give us the supports to ensure that we're successful this time. Thank you.
I would just add, agree with Shannon's points. I would just add looking at innovation dollars and set-asides or carve-outs for Indigenous businesses who are able to pivot through the ICID innovation funding. Additionally, a consideration for infrastructure projects as prioritized those projects that have Indigenous businesses as partners or owners of those projects, or equity participation. So we can continue to support outside of procurement, but in any project that we're putting forward with support of infrastructure or shovel-ready funding, that we consider that it has Indigenous equity.
Ray Wanich, can do. I mentioned earlier the partnership with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in CANDU and the Community Economic Development Initiative, which again, for this third iteration coming up in the spring of next year, our funding has been cut in half, and there's still a lot of applicants that would love to go through the process. And I mentioned the largest Indigenous community in Canada, that being Blood Tribe. That was ground zero of the opioid crisis. Dr. Esther Tailfeathers, really good friend of mine, was front and center there. I was on their health board for a while.
We're at time right there, Raymond.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We try to get everybody in before 1 o'clock. And Ms. Blaney, you have 6 minutes now. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank all the members for your testimony today. I'm going to start off with Mr. Metatwa Bin first. It's nice to see you again. I don't know if you remember me, but Andrew Leach introduced me to you last year, so it's good to have you here. I was really shocked to hear that some of these organizations are having to forward some of the folks to Community Futures and regional economic branches because there is a difference in how they access the loans through those programs. Can you be a little more specific about what those are, what the challenges are and what the differences are? And then the other question that I have is you talked very clearly about the second phase has to happen without delay. And you know what I've heard from some folks is even if it was retroactive, it would be helpful, but it's not always about retroactive because often that's too late. I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit about that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So what we found is when our program was launched, it was 2.5 months after the Canadian response. And then right around the same time, the Community Futures Network launched their programs, and the RDAs were not all aligned on how they delivered it. So we had some discrepancies in some RDAs are stacking CERB on top of their RRF is what they're calling it, the relief program. They were able to go above the $40,000. In that survey we did, 40% of them needed more than $40,000. 25% of them needed more than $100,000. So we needed to be more flexible. We didn't have that flex. We were $40,000, that's all we get. So larger loans, stacking. The CFTC network is going to be able to retain that capital to build up their loan portfolios after the loans are repaid. NACA and our AFI network are not afforded that ability, and we've been asking for new capital for the network for 20 years now. So that needs to be improved. Ontario has a program where it's 50-50 non-repayable, 50 repayable. I think that would make more sense considering all the barriers that Indigenous people face within their communities. Thank you.
And so I asked about the retroactive part. So I hope that you will mention that. But the other thing that I wanted to question, and I'll start with you and then maybe go to Ms. Bull, is just around startup Indigenous businesses. We know that brand new businesses that were just starting up not too long before COVID-19 across the board in Canada are really struggling. I'm just wondering if you're hearing anything about startup Indigenous businesses. And I think it's really important when we talk about this, because this is about not only supporting business, but the economic justice part of this is understanding that legislation, provincially and federally, have silenced and stifled Indigenous businesses forever. And if we're going to actually deal with that economic justice, we need to support them. So if you could talk about the retroactive pay, the startup businesses, and then if I could move on to you, Ms. Bull.
Thank you very much for the question. So we're seeing businesses are still planning. They're all readjusting to this new world that we're living in. A lot of them are going online. They're definitely marketing and providing more website and services online. Businesses are creating online type of businesses, but the hardest hit are the tourism type businesses who have lost an entire season, and we really have to think about support to support them. So this retroactive idea that you have about going back to when the government first announced would be great, because we were initially told we would at minimum mirror the Canadian emergency program, but we're not even afforded that right now by delaying having those businesses be eligible for the $60,000. So we really need to catch up and provide the support necessary to support our community. Thank you.
You're quite right, and thank you for acknowledging that with respect to Indigenous businesses. We definitely do see that a number of businesses in the Indigenous economy are very young, less than 5 years, and particularly with a number of these supports, we had a number of members who had not yet filed a tax return, so couldn't apply for a number of the wage subsidies, and were so young that they didn't have revenue to be able to compare against for the wage subsidy as well. And for CEBA also. So those have been some barriers, and I know that there has been some work to fix some of those barriers, but that is a concern. We need to look into that a little more to see about those young businesses and their survival rate through this period. But perhaps there is a recommendation or a potential program that we could support those businesses that have failed or that were new businesses in order to recover and innovate and return to the economy as a priority.
And, I really appreciate the discussion around tourism businesses, because I'm hearing that as well, as tourism businesses are really struggling in my riding. Both Indigenous and non-Indigenous tourism-based businesses are really challenged at this time. I'm just wondering if you could speak to that as well, about, in terms of those businesses and what kind of supports they would require to help them facilitate through this time, so that we're still seeing them there in their communities after COVID ends at some point.
So I know that Keith Henry at ITAC has developed a tourism economic recovery strategy for Indigenous businesses. So I won't speak too much to that, because he's definitely the expert in that case. Of course, additional funds he has a real research on the requirement for additional funds. I would just say that if we look at the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses recent report on business survival rate, their second group of business survivor are professional services or healthcare services, as the businesses that are at the most concern of not being able to survive. And if we look at Stats Canada, that's a very high number of businesses in the Indigenous community as well. So we also need to be putting some supports towards professional healthcare social assistance services.
Ms. Bull, I understand that you're going to be leaving us shortly, and so I want to thank you for your participation with the committee today. For the committee, we have about 25 minutes of a round of questioning and 10 minutes left on the clock. So I would ask for unanimous consent. I have checked with the clerk, and we're not bumping into a subsequent committee. So with unanimous consent, we'll do the next full round of questioning. Any thumbs down? I'm looking around at the members and I don't see any thumbs down. So I'll take that as unanimous consent to carry on. And we'll go to our final second round of questioning. Now for the Conservative Party, do I have Mr. Vidal or Ms. McLeod?
It's Ms. McLeod, Mr. Chair. With all due respect, we sent our speaking order to the clerk, so I'm not sure where the breakdown in communication is, but it is Ms. McLeod next.
Well, the breakdown is that we didn't do the second round of questioning, which all of the names were cycled through that round. So when I went to the third round, to the second hour, it's a new list, but you just carried on with it, which is fine, whatever you wish. So that was the issue, Mr. Vidal. Ms. McLeod,
Thanks, appreciate
please.
that.
Okay, Ms. McLeod, please go ahead.
Thank you. And if I understand correctly, Ms. Bull's got to leave shortly, so maybe I can start with her unless she's down to minutes only. You talked about an Indigenous economic recovery plan. Can you talk to me about where that is at in terms of the process, who would be involved in terms of developing it, a little bit more thinking around what you would see happening with that?
So we've definitely done some thinking around this, but we're working really closely with our other colleagues at the other national Indigenous organizations who are here in addition to NIDB. I think we really need to look at what we need to do from a perspective of across the Indigenous economy. So that does include things like procurement. It also includes infrastructure spending. How are we supporting partnerships in infrastructure? Similar to the announcement that was just made on Indigenous natural resource partnerships, how can we support that across the whole country? And innovation as well, as I mentioned. So really, how are we looking at across all of the government and provincially as well, and corporate Canada also, so that we can continue to support Indigenous economy through the recovery period and future as well. So we are working on this national Indigenous economic strategy, but I think in the near term, we really need to be looking at where we need to be supporting for recovery across all ministries, as I mentioned earlier.
Okay, the next two questions, we've heard some pretty bleak figures about business failure from CFIB. You had talked about having done some work. Are you perceiving the same or worse within Indigenous businesses? Have you got any sort of clear idea? Are you needing the results of the next survey before you can better articulate survival through a second wave?
So when we looked at our initial survey into the StatsCan survey that was done through the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, we did see about a 5% difficulty. So I expect that we'll see something similar. And then of course for CFIB, if we look at tourism, the high areas, as I said, in social services, we know that Indigenous businesses are younger, that they have less access to financing, that the access to financing has been delayed. In a lot of cases, they're in more regional or remote rural areas. So I do expect that we'll see more of an impact exacerbated for our Indigenous businesses. But our plan is to do that comparison as well, so that we do have the data to inform everyone here as to where we really see the additional impact.
Okay. Thank you. And I'll now go to Mr. Metawabin, sorry if I pronounced it incorrectly. You said that you had proposed a tailored package. And I know the government made modifications as it went along, and we understand they were slow modifications. But can you tell me what might have been in your tailored package that you still see is missing, on top of sort of the sort of structure of the loan programs? Is there anything more about this package that you could talk about?
I think one of the important things to know is that the AFIs have been delivering support to Indigenous businesses for 35 years now. So they know what their community, what their businesses need, but they need the flexibility. And when they're put into this little box of $40,000 and $10,000 non-repayable, and doesn't give you too much flexibility to support a business that might need $80,000 or might need other support services, then it makes it very difficult. They need business support services because we have to work with each and every individual business to ensure that they're responding to this crisis in a meaningful way so that they can survive through this. The support that's been announced to date is going to take us to March 31st, 2021, sorry. And what are we going to do after that? We really have to come up with another strategy to ensure that we're going to, in this uncertain time, last longer. These businesses are hanging on. Our network has been suffering from reduced funding levels for over 20 years now. If we return business support, flexibility for larger loans, more non-repayable, so the Indigenous business is not going to be strapped with all that debt, and more timely response. We should not be responding to the Indigenous community 2 months after all the other Canadian responses are there. Thank you.
You know, I certainly agree with the gap. Mr. Wenich, I was just wondering, as much as it pains me to sort of look at this, I think it's reasonable that some businesses are going to fail, and it takes some work. I know talking to other folks that people need the opportunity and the skills and expertise not only to sort of scale up businesses, but to scale down businesses. And you know, if they aren't going to make it, is there training that is being done? I mean, I know your goal is to increase business, but are you doing anything in terms of supporting people that are going to have the challenges of dealing with the loss of their business?
I'm afraid it's yes or no. We're way over time. I apologize for that. Could you hold on to that thought, Mr. Ray? Well, I explained that Madame Berube has to leave. I'm going to, as the chair, move her 2.5-minute question up now. And Lenore, you'll be next after that in your normal rotation. So Madame Berube, for 2.5 minutes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for the two remaining witnesses. In the spring, the government announced $306 million for short-term non-reversible loans to help Indigenous businesses. In your opinion, do you think that the list of eligible activities covered is adequate?
Thank you for the question. So we've been delivering actively that money that was announced by the government since June. It was 2.5 months after the COVID hit, but it's going to take us to March 31st, 2021. So as far as adequacy, we can use that money to put it out to the community. If we can improve the flexibility and use this as an opportunity to capitalize the networks, to retain the capital like the CF network is going to be doing, be more flexible, allow stacking, allow the AFIs to do their work to ensure that they're supporting those businesses, then that money is going to go to work in a good spot. And I want to make note to the committee that the money that was initially given to this network more than 30 years ago has been recycled 15 times. So that money still is retained and has been doing this work.
Yeah, I agree with Shannon. I sit on the board of Settlement Investment Corporation. They're the small business lender for the Métis settlements businesses. So yeah, I'm very thankful for that first tranche of $40,000 loans, of which $10,000 is a grant. Most of the feedback we've had is that the wish was that all of it was a grant. I think we've heard throughout the presentation here, we're just compounding the fact with more debt. And because a lot of these clientele are high risk anyway, and a lot of them aren't bankable, they can't go to the big five for loans and mortgages. So we offer the only solution, but we're only compounding the issue by lending them more money. And
Thanks. I'm sorry, I have to interrupt there. Ms. Zan, you're up next. You have 5 minutes. This will be followed by Ms. Blaney for 2.5 minutes. Ms. Zan, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. And I do come to you today from the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq in Nova Scotia, the people of the Dawn. It's been very interesting to hear what all the witnesses have had to say about both mental health and business in Indigenous communities. And I have to say that I really wish you all the very, very best, because I know it's a very difficult time right now, and it's a very difficult time for all businesses. I'm sure most businesses that I've talked to would love to have had grants instead of loans, but you know, such is business in a way that it's all about trying to become successful and then being able to maintain that, and it's a very difficult time to do that right now. Now, when Mr. Shannon Metawaban spoke in the spring, you also mentioned that you just signed the contribution agreement with Indigenous Services Canada with respect to the $306.8 million fund for Indigenous SMEs. And at the time, you were expecting the funding to start flowing, and by mid-June. And Chief Perry Bellegarde of Assembly of First Nations had noted that only 6,000 businesses would be able to benefit from that funding, leaving most of the 40,000 Indigenous businesses in Canada without support. So how many Indigenous businesses have actually received funding to date? Is there any funding left? And if so, how many more businesses will receive funding?
Thank you for the question. So today, just so that you know that the funding has experienced some competition from other measures of delivery, namely the CF network, which has some better conditions than the AFI network. So we have half of our members are CFs and Aboriginal Capital Corporations. So it's inequitable already. So some of them can access the CF network. And what we're seeing is they're actually recommending their clients go to that measure, because at the end of the day, they're going to be able to retain that capital. So the support for the AFI network is the last choice, I suppose you can say. So that made it difficult. So we've supported 1,500 businesses to date. $60 million is in their hands right now. $100 million of contracts have been signed with 37 AFIs, and they're busy at work putting it out there. Now, I've been reluctant to because this was initially set up for current and former clients of the AFI network, which we've supported 48,000 loans over the past 35 years. But now it's time to open it up, improve the flexibility, ensure that we're planning to March 31st, 2021, because that's what all our AFIs are doing, is supporting principal payments, operational expenses, interest payments for these businesses so that they can survive and get some certainty to what's happening with the pandemic. But we're going to be undertaking a survey as well to understand what other services are going to be required. But I do know that the AFIs need business support services because they have to sit down with all the clients. And they have been reduced in funding over the past 20 years, as I said, by 70%. So when you had 4 people working in the business area, now you have 1. So it's time to return to that level again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And can I ask you then, I noticed that the AFI is also included when we're talking about the latest new announcement of Chief Terry Paul and Member 2 for with regards to the Clearwater deal. So were you involved with that at all? And this seems to be a very exciting announcement that our First Nations people are going to be 7 different communities now involved in one of the biggest seafood operations in Canada, really. Could you expand on how that is going to work out for the future for First Nations?
I think what it shows is that it's an example of where the Indigenous community is going. This is a $1 billion transaction where the Indigenous community is now part of their traditional harvesting livelihood so that they will maintain ownership of that livelihood. In Canada, you right now have the AFI network that has capital and they're lending for small and micro businesses because 85% of them have less than 5 people working for them. So as we grow and as we become more complex, we need more capital. So the growth fund has been created. We have the First Nation Financial Authority providing putting bonds on the market, raising capital, and lending it out to communities. So there's different levers of capital attraction, but the private sector is becoming more involved in this growing economy, and we welcome that, and we want to work with them. Thank you.
Thanks. We're
Thank
at
you very
time right
much.
there.
Well, Alan.
Thanks, Ms. Zane. Ms. Blaney, 2.5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Metatawawat-Bin. You talked about, and you've said it repeatedly, that there has been a 70% decrease in funding over the last 2 decades, if I remember correctly. I'm just wondering if you could speak to that, and if the bridging that gap would really provide the immediate relief that is so necessary across the country.
Well, the important thing to know is that to enable capital to be deployed, you need to enable it with something. And in the Indigenous community, and the same thing happened with the Business Development Bank of Canada when they first launched it. They had tax incentives, they had equity, they had different levers to ensure that this capital went out to the community. They had lots of support services, and they had access to an unlimited amount of capital whenever they needed it, because that was the government of Canada. We haven't been afforded that same the ability to access capital, to have business support services meet the needs of what our clients need, and to have the levers of enabling that capital to go to the community. The equity program needs to be restored to what it was. It was back in the 90s, it was an $80 million program. Now we're at around $30 million. So it's been reduced, and that value of that money is a lot less than it used to be. So really, we have lost a lot. We need to return to that level so that we can deploy that capital out to the community, get businesses started, so that Indigenous people are part of the prosperity of Canada, because Canada wants to get back to being prosperous, and we have to be part of it this time. Thank you.
Well, and I think that's interesting because you're talking about how it was before, and now we're dealing with the added burden of COVID-19. So even if that was returned, it would still not address that bigger barrier. So what do you think we need to do? I mean, this is a committee that will provide recommendations to the government. Is that increase going to be the changing factor, or do we need even more because of COVID-19?
Well, supporting our institutions fully so that Ray and Tabitha and myself, through our organizations, can support our community is a good start. Dealing with the Indian Act that prevents us from starting a business, from buying machinery and farming, and all these things that it prevented us from doing, so that we're at this position where we're starting from way behind, enabling us to have the right business support services so that we can engage every community member that wants to start a business, closing the gap so that somebody has a house, somebody has a pipeline so that they can flush the toilet. These are all minimum requirements of human rights that our communities still do not have. These are important things that we need in place to ensure that we can think about starting a business rather than trying to survive each and every day.
Thank you very much. Thanks so much. Gary Vidal, I finally got to you, and I'll use the list consecutively as you presented it in future, so we don't have that problem. And you have 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't trying to be obstinate. I was just trying to figure out how to keep track of these things straight. So I want to thank our witnesses as well. It's unfortunate we've lost Ms. Bull, but that's fine. My first question is going to be for Mr. Metatawab. You spoke of the delayed experience of many Indigenous businesses in accessing some of the supports for business over the last several months. Ms. Bull today, I think, actually used the word feeling a bit like an afterthought, and we've heard that from other organizations at different times. Could you maybe just take a minute and expand a little bit further on the impact these delays have had, and what you're hearing from the many AFIs that you communicate with and work with every day as to the impact on their business partners, kind of right from the ground, not talking at the big level, but from the stories right on the ground of these businesses, and what impact the delays have had on them?
Yes, this is an important subject. 95% of our AFIs had a survey done right after the pandemic hit within the first week. 95% of our businesses were going to be impacted. So we were actively trying to plan with government to ensure that we had supports in place for them. Unfortunately, the businesses that identified that they wouldn't last more than 6 months with some support, we've gone beyond that timeline, and I'm glad that we're getting support out to the Indigenous businesses early on, I think all the Indigenous businesses that were eligible for the Canada response were able to access it. And then when they needed more money, they weren't permitted to access our program because you can't stack it. So all these mechanisms to ensure flexibility should be removed so that, to ensure flexibility, sorry, so that we can respond to the business needs of today, so that we can at least take us until the end of the government fiscal year. Whereas by that time we'll have a new survey, we'll know what additional supports is going to take us to the summer or into the next fall, because we still don't have certainty to the vaccine or when we're going to get back to business, but we still need to be part of that conversation so that we know, the government knows in step with timing what is required in our community.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to really shift gears here for a minute, and I'm going to ask both witnesses to take a shot at answering this question. Drinking water advisories have been a really big topic and have created many headlines during the pandemic. I know all of my colleagues will agree that the fact is that it's unacceptable that any Canadian would be without safe and reliable drinking water during a pandemic. I mean, as an example, in my riding this morning, there's a state of emergency that's been declared in a First Nation that has lost its drinking water this morning in the midst of the outbreak starting to happen in their communities. From a business perspective, and where I want you to plug in here is, I believe there's a huge opportunity for the Indigenous economy, for Indigenous businesses to be part of the solution to this across the country. And I'm curious if either of you are aware, or if you could share some stories or experiences of where consultation has happened between the government and Indigenous businesses that might have been an attempt or that could be part of contributing to the solution on the drinking water advisories.
So drinking water is integral to human life, and the government has responded to this emergency, this pandemic, with billions and billions of support for Canadians all across the country. But that same support is not afforded to Indigenous people when we can't even get drinking water. This has been a problem for decades, and this should not be the example of what the Prime Minister has done for the pandemic. Should be the example of what he does for boil water. This is the starting point of a community that needs drinking water to ensure that they have the right infrastructure. Then they can start thinking about the future and contributing to the economy. Thank you.
Ray Wanich here. I used to be on the Alberta Water Advisory Committee, and Premier Lougheed was on there, and he used to talk about interbasin water transfer. And it was specific to Alberta because 90% of the population lives south of Calgary, and most of the Indigenous population lives north of Edmonton. So where was that fresh water going to come from? Well, it was going to come from northern Alberta. There were a lot of people that weren't very happy with that suggestion. But I think it is about trying to be innovative. And like I said, with Edmonton and Enoch Cree Nation, last year, Enoch Cree Nation, although that was their traditional territory right adjacent to the North Saskatchewan River, finally have water now into their community from the North Saskatchewan River after all these years. So yeah, it's a huge requirement. I referenced Blood Tribe. They're looking at getting into business, but the glacier that feeds the Old Man River may be gone in 30 years. So it doesn't only impact non-Indigenous farmers down in that country. It impacts the Blood Tribe that has a big irrigation project, and they want their percentages as well. All the province.
I'm sorry, Mr. We're right over time on that. It's a great topic.
I think our chair is frozen. It's the quietest he's been forever.
Is this where I take over the chair now?
Actually, yeah, you do, Gary.
Actually, I think as vice chair, I can adjourn it.
It's vice chair, Ms. McLeod. I'm just joking.
Meeting adjourned as vice chair. I took the chair.
Thank you very much to the witnesses. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it?
And yeah, thank you to the witnesses. It was excellent.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.